Have you ever been treated like a guest in your own life? I wasn't invited to the bridal party. I was expected to be the backdrop. The truth? They used my condo, my sanctuary, as a wedding venue, invited 20 guests, scheduled a champagne tower, and forged my signature to get HOA approval. I'm Claire Morgan. I built this home brick by brick, 84-hour work weeks, skipped holidays, double shifts, and they didn't even ask. In this video, I'll show you how I stopped it, without raising my voice. You'll learn how to protect your space, your name, and your power, even when the people crossing the line are your own family. I shut it down, collected the evidence, and took back control of everything they thought I'd stay quiet about. If you've ever been overlooked, overruled, or just plain used, this is your story too. Watch till the end, because sometimes the only way to be heard is to stop asking for permission. Before we dive into the story, I'd love to get to know you a little better. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. That way I can send you a special shout out. Now, let's begin our story together. I wasn't invited to be a guest. I was expected to be the backdrop. The envelope arrived on a Thursday evening, tucked between a delivery of office pens and a promotional flyer for gutter cleaning. I had just kicked off my heels, a little proud of closing 2 listings that day, and was halfway through warming up leftover risotto. The box leaned casually against my door, white with gold trimming, sealed with a bow that was fancier than any gift I'd received from my family in years. I brought it inside, setting it on the kitchen island next to the risotto. My place still smelled faintly of eucalyptus from the diffuser I'd left running that morning, one of those little luxuries I never let anyone mess with. The condo was my sanctuary, a symbol of the 84-hour work weeks, the missed birthdays, and the years I'd spent navigating Chicago's brutal real estate market. Every chair, every framed print, every drawer had a story. The label on the box said, "To the Morgan Residence, Final Wedding Prep Kit." Inside, white balloons, faux ivy garlands, and pink paper fans. Beneath all of it, an envelope. Elegant calligraphy across the front. "You're invited." But when I opened it, the message wasn't to me. "You're invited to the bridal bash pre-party honoring Rebecca Morgan. Location, Claire Morgan's residence. Date, Saturday, 3 p.m. Attire, chic neutrals. Note, please arrive early for bridal games and photo setup." I read it again, then again. Not once did the word host appear next to my name. I wasn't consulted. I wasn't even CC'd. My condo, my home, had been conscripted into service without a word of consent. I stared at the letterhead, heart thudding in my chest. Not with anger yet, but with that strange cocktail of disbelief and recognition. This wasn't new. Mom had always framed Rebecca's needs as urgent, special, or not something to make a fuss over. Growing up, I had the quiet bedroom, the hand-me-down car, the 1-scoop cone. Rebecca got glitter. I pulled out my phone and opened our family group chat, the one I muted months ago after being labeled too transactional, when I wouldn't co-sign on a loan for Rebecca's photography business. I scrolled. A screenshot from Aunt Linda caught my eye. So excited for the photos. Claire's condo has that stunning lighting. Can't wait for the champagne tower. Below it, a message from Mom. Yes, her balcony view will be perfect for the Bride Squad shots. Bride Squad, champagne, stunning lighting. I stood in the middle of my own living room and realized I'd been repurposed. My home was now a venue. I was just the landlord, a silent one apparently. I called Mom. She picked up with that cheerful tone she saves for grocery clerks and tax accountants. "Hi, honey. Oh, did you get the box? Isn't it cute?" "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "when exactly were you planning to ask me about hosting a party at my condo?" A beat of silence. Then, "Oh, Claire, don't be dramatic. You weren't using the living room that weekend anyway, were you?" I pinched the bridge of my nose. "That's not the point." "Well," she continued, undeterred, "we just needed a classy space, and yours has those beautiful touches. That vintage lamp you have in the corner, so elegant, and it photographs so well." She remembered the lamp. It had been a gift from my mentor, Janet, the year I landed my first independent listing. I'd carried it home on the subway, cradled in bubble wrap like a newborn. That lamp had seen every tear and every toast, and now it was just part of the set. "I'm not comfortable with this," I said. "Oh, Claire, it's just one afternoon. Don't be difficult. Can't you just support your sister? For once?" That phrase, "for once," landed like a slap. I'd paid for her first round of business cards, covered rent once when her lease fell through, taken calls at midnight when she cried about failed auditions, and now I was difficult. Ethan walked in just as I hung up. He glanced at the mess of decorations on the island and raised an eyebrow. "You're hosting a wedding party now?" "Apparently," I said, without knowing it. He walked over and gently rested a hand on my lower back. "Want me to call your mom?" I shook my head. "No, I need to do this my way." He nodded but lingered. "They don't get to decide what happens in your home, Claire." I didn't respond. I walked to the balcony instead, invitation still in my hand, and stepped into the chill of spring. The city buzzed below, oblivious. A train rumbled in the distance. The lights from neighboring high-rises blinked like distant thoughts. I unlocked my phone, opened my mortgage app. I didn't check the balance. I just looked at the header, Claire Morgan, property owner. It wasn't about a party. It never had been. It was about remembering who built this life, brick by brick, shift by shift, decision by decision. I had built something permanent, and now they were trying to redecorate it with streamers and cake pops. The invitation fluttered slightly in the breeze. I held it tighter, and then I noticed something else. On the bottom corner of the invitation, just above the RSVP number, sponsored in part by the Morgan Family Trust. The same trust my parents had told me was tapped out. They called it our family asset. I called it 37 months of skipped weekends, late-night closings, and lukewarm gas station coffee. I called it mine, until they decided to rename it without asking. The condo wasn't supposed to be a battlefield. When I first walked through that glass-paneled door in 2021, the place smelled like fresh paint and a hint of lemon oil from the staging crew. But it was empty in the best way, like potential. It had taken 3 years of grinding, juggling 2 broker licenses, and saying no to every invitation that came with glitter or confetti. And when the keys landed in my hand that April morning, I looked around and told myself out loud, this is the beginning of the life I bought. No one was there for the closing, just me and the notary, who offered a kind smile and an extra copy of the documents. I texted Mom a picture of the keys on my palm. She sent back a thumbs-up emoji. Dad didn't respond. Rebecca posted a filtered photo of her in Florence that day, holding a wine glass, the caption reading, "Finding myself one vineyard at a time." "Isn't it cute?" Mom had said last week in a group chat I wasn't supposed to be part of but accidentally got forwarded by Aunt Linda. We can finally use Claire's space, Rebecca's bridal loft dreams coming true. Bridal loft. My stomach turned. They had reduced the sum of my sacrifices into a photo shoot backdrop. I used to think these wounds came in loud moments, screaming, door slamming, things thrown across rooms. But mine arrived softly, in omission, in assumptions, in calling my condo ours when no one else had skipped Thanksgiving to finalize paperwork or fought off a sinus infection while showing homes in the rain. One memory kept flashing like a hazard light. Christmas 2020. I had just paid off my student loans. I gave everyone personalized gifts. A wine decanter for Dad, a silk scarf for Mom, and a silver bracelet for Rebecca with her initials engraved. She never wore it. That same night, they announced Rebecca would get her inheritance early, to explore, to grow, to see the world. They handed me a Target gift card with a sticky note that read, "You're always so practical." Then Dad gave me a firm pat on the shoulder and added, "Independence builds character." Now, in spring 2024, I stood in the same kitchen I'd painted in sea salt blue, scrubbing the backsplash like it had personally offended me. My shoulders were tight, my mind stuck in a cycle of remembering and trying not to. "You okay?" Ethan's voice came gently from the hallway. He had taken to keeping his voice low when I was like this. Not afraid, just careful. "Just cleaning," I mumbled, though the tile had already been spotless. "Or trying to scrub the word bridal loft off these walls." He stepped closer and placed a takeout container on the counter. Thai food, my favorite. "You could tell them no, he said. I did. Mom said I wasn't even using the living room that weekend, like it was up for debate. He didn't push further. That's what I liked about Ethan. He didn't fix, he witnessed. Sometimes that was enough. I sat on the bar stool and pulled up an old text thread with Mom, October 2019. She had written, "If you find a place, we'll help with the down payment. Families do that." I had found a place. I had even sent her the MLS listing. Her response had been vague. "Oh, honey, that's a big number." And then, nothing. No check, no follow-up, just silence. Now it was their loft. Their party space, our family asset. I blinked back the familiar tightness in my chest and opened the condo association portal. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe a distraction, maybe a reason to laugh at how far I'd let this go. What I found stopped me cold. A request form, submitted 3 days ago. Guest access for 20 people. Event listed as Morgan Party. Pre-wedding welcome. Submitted by Denise Morgan, my mother. The condo wasn't a metaphor anymore. It was literally being occupied. Every room felt smaller suddenly, like it had inhaled too much and forgot how to breathe. The reading nook by the window, where I curled up with real estate journals and soup on snow days, now felt like a guest waiting room. My hallway, lined with photos from open houses I'd sold, looked staged, not lived in. I shut the laptop slowly, careful not to slam it. I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt was worse. Erased. Not as a homeowner. As a daughter. Ethan reached across and took my hand. "Want me to talk to them?" I shook my head. "No, I'll handle it, but not with words. Not this time." He didn't ask what I meant. Neither of us needed to. They rang my doorbell with champagne. I answered with silence. I had been sitting on the edge of my couch, still dressed in jeans and a faded Northwestern hoodie when the knock came. I didn't move at first. I already knew what it was. The planner had emailed. The florist had called. Denise had forgotten to mention the exact time. But here they were, early, enthusiastic, and entirely uninvited. I opened the door to a stranger holding a clipboard, 3 helium balloons, and a too-wide smile. "Claire, right?" she chirped. "We're just going to set up a few things. Your mom said you'd have everything cleared." "My mom doesn't live here," I said flatly. She laughed like I was joking, brushing past me before I could say more. The balloons followed, bobbing gently as if mocking my hesitation. Within 20 minutes, my condo no longer felt like mine. White tulle trailed from curtain rods I installed myself. Faux greenery wound around the balcony railing. My grandmother's quilt, usually folded over the couch arm, was gone, replaced by a blush pink throw that didn't belong to me. My books were hidden. My lamp was unplugged to make room for a softbox light. By the time Rebecca arrived, radiant in an off-white jumpsuit and matching heels, it was too late to undo any of it. She entered with a beam so bright I had to blink. "Claire!" she sang, hugging me lightly. "This is beyond perfect. You're seriously saving my life." I didn't answer. She didn't notice. Guests trickled in slowly. Bridesmaids, family friends, distant cousins who hadn't sent Christmas cards in years. A couple I didn't recognize asked if this was the family's River North condo. Before I could explain, Denise cut in with a laugh. "Oh, it's all of ours, really. We've made so many memories here already." I stood rooted to the spot, blinking at the floral arch someone had wedged into my reading nook. The corners of the rug were curled from being shifted. My coffee table had been pushed against the wall and covered in Miss to Mrs. confetti. Denise walked around like she owned the air. At some point, someone popped open one of my wines, the Zinfandel I had bought after my first six-figure deal. Mom gestured toward the counter, telling guests to pour freely, we brought plenty more. Only they hadn't. They'd brought expectations, entitlement, and the scent of vanilla candles so strong it made my head ache. Aunt Linda appeared beside me quietly, handing me a glass of water. Her eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on Rebecca posing beside the arch. "Your grandmother would have hated this," she murmured. "She believed homes were earned," I whispered back, "not borrowed for photo ops." We stood like that for a moment, sharing silence. Linda's fingers squeezed mine gently. In the kitchen, someone was asking Denise about the marble backsplash. "Oh, Claire designed it herself," she said brightly. "But we all had input." She winked like it was a joke. It wasn't. A bridesmaid brushed past me and said, "Love your place. Rebecca's so lucky to have a sister like you." I opened my mouth to reply, but the girl was already gone, humming along to a wedding playlist blasting from my speaker. I found Ethan in the hallway near the coat rack. He looked as uncomfortable as I felt. "You okay?" he asked. "I feel like I'm trespassing in my own home. Do you want me to say something?" I shook my head. "Not yet." He nodded, but his brows stayed furrowed. I wandered toward the dining table where someone had left a clipboard. Thinking it might be the vendor checklist, I flipped through it, casually at first. Then I stopped. At the top, in tidy handwriting, pre-wedding photo shoot, May 18th. Location, Claire's condo. Confirmed with HOA. Confirmed? I hadn't confirmed anything. The air in the room seemed to shift, like the walls had moved in closer. I closed the clipboard slowly, heart starting to thud. Someone behind me laughed. Champagne glasses clinked. Rebecca's voice drifted down the hallway, excited about angles and lighting. I moved toward the bathroom, keeping my steps steady. Once inside, I locked the door and exhaled. My hands went to the drawer beneath the sink. Tucked between rolls of tissue and a spare toothbrush was a folder, the estate documents Grandma Ruth's lawyer had mailed when the trust was settled. The deed, the mortgage, my name, scrawled across official lines. I flipped to the signature page, Claire Morgan. Only the ink was darker than I remembered, crisper. Too crisp for a signature dated 2021. My stomach twisted. I reached for the light, held the paper closer. It looked like mine, but it felt wrong, like someone had taken a copy and filled it in. The knock on the bathroom door startled me. "Claire?" Ethan's voice. Gentle. "You okay?" I didn't answer right away. I stared at my name, the ownership line, the page that had once given me pride, and now doubt. "Yes," I said finally. "Just needed a minute." The party hummed behind the wall, muffled by plumbing and denial. The thing about being erased isn't that it's loud. It's quiet, smiling, wearing pearls and calling it love. It's the kind of thing you don't notice until your name is still on the deed, but no longer spoken aloud. And I was done being silent. My name was on the form, but that wasn't my handwriting. I stared at the scanned copy on my screen, fingers frozen over the keyboard. It looked almost right. The slant, the loop in the C, the spacing. But not quite. I'd written my name thousands of times, on checks, on closing docs, on birthday cards, and this wasn't it. The signature on the HOA guest access form was close enough to pass a glance, but it wasn't mine. I had spent the better part of that Sunday morning clearing my dining table, replacing placemats with piles of paper, HOA bylaws, archived emails, scanned forms, and a legal pad scrawled with notes. The May light filtered through the windows in soft streaks, but inside, everything felt sharp. Too sharp. Ethan moved quietly in the kitchen behind me, preparing a second round of coffee. "Do you want me to double-check the comparison scan?" he asked. I nodded without looking up. "Zoom into the loops. See the tail on the G? Mine dips lower." He leaned over, our shoulders almost touching as he toggled between two PDFs. "You're right," he said finally. "It's a mimic, but not perfect." That was the problem. It didn't have to be perfect, just plausible. I took a breath and typed out a careful email to Ms. Elaine Park, our HOA president. She was precise, sharp-eyed, and knew every clause in our building's regulations by heart. I kept my tone polite, barely, and asked for clarification on how the guest access request had been approved without my direct confirmation. She replied within the hour. "Per our records, attached is the signed approval form submitted by Denise Morgan on April 12th. Please advise if there is any discrepancy." Discrepancy. The word sat on my tongue like something bitter. Ethan read over my shoulder. She didn't even try to hide it. "No," I said. She knew no one would check. I forwarded the form to Ben Hoffman, an attorney I'd worked with years ago when I was still climbing the real estate ladder. He specialized in property disputes and had a dry wit that made even eviction clauses sound like stand-up comedy. His reply came that afternoon. "Claire," it began, "this is bad, legally and ethically. If you're the sole deed holder and someone else signed in your name, that's forgery, even if it's your mother, especially if it's your mother." He added, "The condo board may see it as a civil matter, but if you wanted to, you could file a formal complaint, possibly more." I sat with that for a while. My mother didn't forge my signature out of malice. She did it out of certainty that I wouldn't fight her, that I would stay quiet, that I'd chalk it up to another one of her little miscommunications, like the time she offered up my living room for Rebecca's bridal fitting, or when she asked for my password just to help schedule cleaning and ended up reading 6 months' worth of my private emails. This time, though, it wasn't just my email. It was my name, my legal authority, my home. Ethan placed the mug of coffee in front of me and sat down. "What do you want to do?" I didn't answer right away. I opened my files again, scrolling through property tax receipts, the notarized deed transfer, my original closing paperwork, all of it stamped with my name, all of it earned, paid for, protected. A thought stirred in the back of my mind, Grandma Ruth's voice from years ago. "It's not the lies they tell you, it's the ones they sign in your name that you've got to watch." I could almost see her, sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of chamomile and her gold-rimmed glasses slipping down her nose. She had known this would happen, not the party, maybe, but the betrayal, the casual erasure. I picked up my phone, scrolling through unread emails. One caught my eye, buried under newsletters and RSVP confirmations. Subject line, "Wedding Vendor Invoice, Morgan Residence, June 14th. I opened it slowly. The body of the email was brief, a list of services, photography package, catering prep, floral delivery, location, Morgan Residence, River North Condo, client Rebecca Morgan billing, contact Claire Morgan. My stomach dropped. Not only had they used my name to get HOA approval, they were using it as the billing address for vendors. The planner hadn't just overstepped. She had listed me as the financial backer, and no one had asked. I stared at the invoice total. 5 figures, not an accident. Ethan leaned over again. "What is it?" "They're using my name to reserve vendors," I said quietly. "And they listed me as the point of contact for payments." Dear friend, what would you do if you were in my shoes? I bet you can't guess what's coming next. But before we go any further, drop a 5 in the comments if you're still with me, because what happens next might just leave you speechless. He blinked. Are you on the hook for this?" "I don't know," I whispered. But I had a feeling I would be if I didn't stop it now. I opened a new message to Mr. Hoffman, attached the invoice, and asked one question. If this goes unpaid, am I liable? While waiting, I refreshed the condo portal. The guest access form was still marked approved, but this time I clicked the revoke authorization button and typed a note for HOA. Access granted without owner's knowledge. Signature was forged. Request revocation and internal review. It felt like a small click. but it echoed like a door slamming shut. As the page reloaded, Ethan reached for my hand. "You're not overreacting," he said. "This isn't drama. It's real." "I know," I replied. "And next time someone says, 'It's just family,' I'm going to ask them if family signs your name without asking." I opened my file folder again, this time slower. Behind the documents sat a smaller, older envelope, one I hadn't touched in months, the deed to my parents' house. Grandma Ruth had co-signed it decades ago, and after her passing, I'd quietly inherited a portion she'd left in trust, for just in case. I'd never thought I'd need it. But tonight, as the city lights blinked beyond my windows and my inbox filled with receipts I never agreed to, I realized something. They treated my condo like community property. Maybe it was time I reminded them what property law actually meant. If they wanted to treat my condo like theirs, I had no reason to treat their house like it wasn't mine. The law office smelled faintly of lemon oil and copy toner. Mr. Hoffman greeted me with a nod, his tie slightly loosened as if to signal we were past formalities now. On his desk were 3 neatly clipped documents and a ceramic mug that read, "Property law is personal." "You're sure about this?" he asked. I nodded, resting my hands on the polished wood. "They made my home a venue without asking. I'm not doing this out of spite. I need them to stop treating me like I owe them my silence." He pushed the first document toward me, a trustee action to initiate sale proceedings on the Oak Brook property. "You're listed as co-trustee. That gives you equal authority to proceed, with or without consensus." I signed. No ceremony, no hesitation. Later that day, I drove to Oak Brook with the real estate signage tucked into my trunk. The house looked just as I remembered. White shutters, red brick, 2 tall oak trees flanking the walkway like silent guards. It was the same house where I'd once learned how to ride a bike, and later, how to keep my mouth shut. Dad answered the door, wiping his hands with a dish towel like he'd just stepped out of a sitcom kitchen. "What's this?" he asked, glancing at the sign I held. I walked past him, straight to the kitchen table, and laid out the papers. The vendor invoice, the forged event form, a copy of the HOA signature comparison. I didn't need to raise my voice. "I'm listing the house," I said. "You have 30 days. He stared at me like I'd spoken in code. Then he laughed. "You've got to be kidding. That house is ours." "No," I said evenly. "It's part of a trust, one I co-administer, and I'm exercising my legal rights." He stepped back, his face darkening. "This is because of the party? Claire, this is your sister's wedding, for God's sake." I looked him in the eye. "This is because of years of treating me like I'm temporary in your lives." Denise came in then, wiping her hands, face tight with confusion. "Claire, honey, let's not escalate. We should have told you about the form." "You should have asked," I said. "We didn't think you'd mind, not really." "That's the problem, Mom. You never think I'll mind, because you don't think I matter enough to ask." The room went quiet. Aunt Linda stood halfway down the stairs. She didn't speak, but her eyes met mine with something that looked like quiet approval. "You're doing what she never could," she whispered. "Your grandmother." Frank's face turned red. "You're tearing this family apart." "No," I said, voice steady. "I'm just done pretending we were ever whole." Denise stepped forward, reaching out as if distance could still be bridged. "You'll regret this when you're alone," she said softly. But I didn't turn around, not even when I stepped off the porch and pressed the real estate sign into the lawn. Not when I heard the screen door creak behind me. I stayed in the car for a few minutes after pulling into the garage back at my condo, not out of hesitation, but because I needed to breathe through the strange calm settling in my chest. Not relief, not triumph, just release. Inside, the place was still echoing with the scent of borrowed candles from last month's party. I lit one of my own, lavender and bergamot, and stood by the kitchen window watching the sky shift. I remembered when I was 19 and asked Dad if I could use the car to drive to an interview. He'd said, Earn it first. And I did. With this condo, I didn't just earn it. I fought for it every step of the way. But when it came time for recognition, I was expected to fade into the wallpaper. Now, for the first time, I had said no. Not by shouting, not by begging, but by acting. The way no one expected me to. Later that night, I called Mr. Hoffman just to confirm the notice timelines again. He answered on the third ring. "You've got every legal right," he said gently, and frankly, more restraint than most. I smiled faintly. "I wasn't raised to make noise," he chuckled. "Well, you sure know how to make your point without shouting." As we ended the call, I opened my laptop. The listing for the Oak Brook house was already live. I reread the description. Spacious 4-bedroom, colonial, ideal for multi-generational living. My breath caught. I deleted that line. It wasn't ideal for everyone, and I was done making room for those who never made room for me. That night, I pulled out an old photo album Grandma had left behind. The only thing from that house I took with me when I moved out. On the third page was a photo of me at age 7, standing beside her tomato vines, holding a garden spade nearly half my size. She'd written under it in her looping script, "My Claire, strong hands, soft heart." She used to tell me, being good doesn't mean being silent. At the time, I thought she was talking about manners. Now I realized she meant this moment. I closed the album and looked at myself in the hallway mirror. Hair pulled back, shoulders straight. No tears, no makeup to fix, just me. The thought flickered. Was I becoming like them? Was this revenge dressed as justice? But then I remembered the clipboard, the floral arch, the forged form, the invoice, and all the quiet erasures that came before. This wasn't revenge. This was a refusal to be overlooked in my own life. I had finally chosen to stop asking for room and start taking it. The attic was hotter than I remembered. Dust clung to the wooden beams, and the faint scent of mothballs and cedar hung in the air. I climbed the narrow steps slowly, holding a cardboard box labeled Claire's Room, 1998. Inside, faded finger paintings, a cracked snow globe, and a bundle of baby pictures bound together with a rubber band that had long since dried and crumbled. They hadn't taken them, not even when they left. I sat down on the attic floor, legs crossed like I used to do during story time with Grandma. I flipped through the photos, me in oversized sunglasses, me holding a stuffed giraffe, me with a missing front tooth and a stubborn scowl. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but instead I smiled. These fragments of childhood didn't hurt anymore. They felt like proof that I'd been here, that I mattered, even when no one framed the pictures. Downstairs, I left the deed in a white envelope on the dining table. Next to it, I tucked a note for whoever would open the door next. She didn't just leave, she built something else. The sale closed that Friday. No objections, no calls, no last-minute pleas, just a notification from Mr. Hoffman that the check had cleared and the paperwork had been filed. Before I locked up the house for the last time, I walked through every room one final time. The kitchen still held the faint scent of vanilla, Grandma's favorite candle. The living room's carpet had a stubborn dip in the corner from Dad's old recliner. I ran my fingers across the mantel where our family photos used to sit. Only dust remained. I paused at the back door. That was where I used to wait for the school bus, staring out through the glass, wondering if anyone noticed when I wasn't in the yearbook, wondering if anyone ever really looked. Now I didn't wonder. I knew who had looked, Grandma, and now I was the one looking back, looking forward. A week later, I stood on a small stage in a local university community center, next to a podium bearing the name of the new Eleanor Morgan Legacy Fund. The air conditioning buzzed softly overhead. 20 students sat in folding chairs, most of them first-generation college-bound, nervous, hopeful, and wide-eyed. I looked at them and thought about Grandma's last letter, the one I'd found behind the kitchen cabinet. "If you're reading this," she had written, "you've found your courage. I'm proud of you. So I told them the truth. "This fund isn't about what I lost," I said, my voice steady. "It's about who I choose to remember. My grandmother believed in starting small and staying steady. That's what built this. That's what builds us." At the university event, as students came up to thank me, one young woman, barely 18, with bright eyes and a shy smile, said, "My mom works 2 jobs. I didn't think this was possible. But now I think maybe it is." I told her something Grandma once told me: "You don't have to know the whole path. Just take the first step with both feet." Later, Aunt Linda met me at a diner near the university. She slid a folded napkin across the table. "That's from your grandmother's recipe box," she said quietly. "Lemon pie. She always said it tasted like June." We didn't cry. We just sat there, 2 women stitched together by quiet survival and small acts of grace. When Ethan and I got home, I placed the old key next to the napkin in the drawer. A key and a recipe. Not much, but enough. Back at the condo, I kept only one thing from the house in Oak Brook: the old brass key to the front door. It rests in the top drawer of my nightstand, not as a token of grief, but as a reminder. Some doors we walk through, others we close behind us. Maybe my parents will never apologize. Maybe Rebecca will never call. And maybe, just maybe, that's not the point. Some stories don't need rewriting, just a different ending. I still keep the old key in my drawer, not to remember the house, but to remind myself that some doors need to close so we can move forward. Sometimes, love isn't about holding on to everyone. It's about holding on to what feels right in your heart. What I've learned is this: not everyone who raises you will protect you, but you can choose to be the first person who truly does. And sometimes, forgiveness begins with doing the one thing that stops the hurt from continuing. If this story brought someone to mind or reminded you of a door you once had to close, feel free to share your thoughts below. Who knows? You just might be starting a new chapter of your own. And if this story spoke to you and you believe in quiet victories, personal growth, and stories that matter, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more ahead, and I'd be honored to share it with you.